Welcome everyone to the Native Voices in STEM. This seminar series is co-sponsored by the University of Arizona, Sloan Indigenous Graduate Partnership, the NSF NRT Indigenous Food, Energy and Water Security and Sovereignty, and the School of Natural Resources and the Environment. We want to acknowledge that the University of Arizona sits on the traditional homelands of the Tohono O'odham Nation and the Pasco Yaqui tribe. This is the last seminar of the fall semester, and we will continue the series in the spring. I'm really excited to welcome our speaker today, Naraba Lane. Naraba Lane is a director of the New Mexico projects at Navajo Power and co-founder of Navajo Ethno-Agriculture. She specializes in community and environmental sustainability by engaging citizen science and participatory research methods with tribal communities to promote and develop sustainable strategies across the issues of water quality, agriculture, energy, and STEM education. Her community development and philanthropic work focuses on social impact, investing in Native American communities. Naraba is a member of the Navajo Nation, and I first met her several years ago in Shiprock, New Mexico, where my team was doing a project with the farmers along the San Juan River as related to the impacts of the Gold Key mine spill. And I began to learn about her work that her and her family has been doing in farming, food sovereignty, and working with the tribal colleges in educating the tribal college students, not only on farming practices, but how that relates to culture. So she has a real wealth of knowledge and innovative spirit, having been working on the ground with the Navajo people. You will learn a lot from her presentation, and I want to welcome her here and thank her for being with us.
Hello. Can everybody hear me okay? Just want to make sure. Okay, cool. Yat Nanaba Lane Chia Tkatni Sandianchna. There's a plan of bushes chin, K Ani Shiche, Obi Betwani Shanella. My name is Donna Belaine, and I don't really necessarily like to identify myself by the work that I do, but since this is in that space, I will tell you, starting with kind of the primary things I have on my plate right now. I am currently the new director of, well, actually it's a startup, so we're all kind of new, but of a utility scale project. It's the very first, basically renewable energy company. We are Native American Navajo owned, and we're all entrepreneurs in our own capacity. And we are currently in the process of building utility scale projects on several tribal lands, but really hoping to bring it back home to the Navajo Nation. And we are working on some projects in Arizona right now, and I'm the newest member, starting to do work in the New Mexico side. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that's my primary thing that I'm up to right now. Secondly is I am the director and the co-founder of Navajo Ethno-Agriculture. And this was a really big project that I started with my family a couple of years ago. I'd say like 3 years ago. I come from a family of educators and healthcare providers, and I also come from a long lineage of farmers, traditional Navajo farmers. And my parents, when they retired, I was living away from the farm and from a long way away from home. And I was running my own business. I had my own business, and I basically ran a an environmental sustainability company where we developed our own chemicals. So did all the patent on those chemicals, and it's up and running now. It's great. And then I started this sustainability consulting entity of that, mostly with when LEED accreditation. I don't know how many of you are familiar with LEED, the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. So that kind of, when the inception of the heyday of that, I was working in New York City and working mostly with restaurants and hotels, and also Indian gaming facilities, casinos, hotels, that were interested in becoming LEED certified. So I started that, and the startup phase of this company was about, to say, like a good 3 years. So that's where my startup kind of entrepreneurial spirit started. Came in, we built the company, and that's where all my time, my heart, my passion was there. And you know, when you live in New York City, it's not what you see on TV at all. I mean, building something from the ground up really takes about 70-hour hours a week, work weeks, and it's not glamorous as you see on TV. And so when a lot of people would come to visit New York City, that was kind of like my time to kind of see the city and learn the city on my own. But I really like the energy there. I really love the energy, I love the diversity. And I learned so much about just really getting out there and having that like go-getter kind of like entrepreneurial spirit. I didn't know what that was back then. I was just like, okay, yeah, I'm building a company. I didn't know I was building a company. I didn't know anything about Native American kind of preference procurement. And that was kind of all new to me when we started working with the hospitality industry. So that lasted a few years. And then my parents were about to retire, so I was very much part of their kind of transitioning from the place they were working back to the farm. And so my father being a former educator in education and my mother being in healthcare, they still had that very much like in their head. Their mentality was all about education, all about healthcare amongst the community. So they started opening up the farm to students. Like a lot of my father's former students were interested in what he was doing beyond retirement or in his retirement. And so they started visiting on kind of like occasionally, very casually. And a lot of them were just amazed. And so when I came home and I saw what my parents doing, I was amazed. I was like, what are you guys doing? You know, you guys are doing like running a full-on school here. Let's make this a nonprofit. And we, you know, I didn't know anything about nonprofit. I just knew how to like start a business. So we made it a nonprofit. And what really two reasons why we started this. Number one is I saw how universities and colleges and professors and researchers were coming to my parents, were coming to my mother and farmers on the San Juan River, Navajo farmers, and literally like extracting like traditional knowledge from our communities and not giving proper attribution. And I saw that too many times, like a handful of times is enough. And so the one time my mother was a little bit stressed out about not getting some information to this person. I said, Mom, what's the problem? Like, what's really going on here? And she told me, I said, that's just so wrong. Like, we can't, this is not right. You're like, what are you asking? What are they giving you? And why are you doing this? And she said, oh, they're offering this and this and like a gift card here and there. And I was just appalled. So I encouraged my mother to respond to this researcher. And I asked my mother, I said, Mom, what is it that you want, that you would like to have, that you just can't get your hands on? And it's like impossible in this space of like your farm. You know, material things are good, like tractors, whatever, like all of this equipment and tools. But what is something that you really, you know, you would really cherish and you just can't get your hands on? And she knew off the top of her head, is that she wanted the traditional, she wanted the seeds from the peach trees that were in the Chaco in Canyon de Chelly. And that was her ask. And that was how she was going to be part of this research project. And there was no response after that. And I know there are universities that have this seed, and I know there are universities that have this kind of in their research arsenal. So I you know, that was it for us. We started the nonprofit. The other reason is that they used to host agriculture camps, and there were a couple of young students who were out on the farm, and it was like during harvest season, and you know, they looked out at the crops, and you know, my family plants in sections: the blue corn, the white corn, and the yellow corn. So at the very end was a blue corn. And as they were leaving, you know, when they're talking with my mother, and they said, well, what is this? Well, okay, so this is yellow corn. So at what stage do you put the dye in the corn to dye it blue? And so my mother was like, yes, that was like a legitimate question they were asking. They just didn't know. And these were young Navajo students. So from there, we really started to take it seriously. So we at that point, we got with my father, who was the educator, and he said, you know, if we're going to really push, we're going to go further with this. We got to create a syllabus. We got to send out proposals. We got to get proposals together. And who are we really targeting? Because we can't just invite all kinds of students and say this is a learning farm, because that was my mom and I's idea. We just wanted to start like workshops and stuff. And my dad said, no, you know, we got to put something that's going to be really challenging for the students. So we did. And we offered a 4-credit hour course through the Navajo Technical University. And our prize, kind of like baby, is our syllabus that we created as a family, because we do have all of the expertise as a family to do this. So we are our own scientists. We are our own researchers. We are our own educators, and our own entrepreneurs. And the thing is with this is that we're able to, what we really want to focus on, and we do focus on, is that we create our own narrative. Like, we have control of our own narrative. We have control of our own research. We know our communities, and nobody's telling us anymore what it is that they want to hear, so that they can write it into their research. And a big part of what we do is we are now guiding educational institutions, people in philanthropy, corporate donors and stuff. We are guiding them on how to properly and culturally do this with cultural awareness. And so in this, we really focus on kind of like the long-term sustainability of our community, because we also, a big part of it is that we're kind of like the voice of what our community wants out there, and or what they don't want, and kind of what's important to us. And as opposed to, like, for example, with the Gold King mine spill, and this is kind of what elevated our work, is when the Gold King mine spill happened, the Gold King mine spill of 2015, when there was the tons of contaminated water from the San Juan Mountains. And you all know of this, I'm sure, because of Dr. Coletta Chief's work. There was so much negative perception on that it just, kind of the media perception was just really, really, really detrimental to our agriculture. And we, as farmers, as scientists, as educators, as people in kind of the outdoor entrepreneurial space, we knew a lot more than what was going on the television, in the media, and before other scientists even came to our area, because we had contact with people upstream, people in Durango, and the outdoor outfitters. We had contact with the Southern Ute environmental team, and so our information came, that like tangible science came from that we are actually going to be okay. And a year later, we were actually okay, and all of these things were happening. And it's like, why is our own tribal leadership, and why is our surrounding community not believing this? And so we continued farming just like we always had. And then the whole thing with the energy stuff started going on with the mine in Arizona, the Peabody mine, and the Navajo Generating Station. So all of this just was like compacted to my return home. And it was like all of these social issues, all of these environmental issues. And I had a really extensive background in kind of like environmental justice, basically, and environmental sustainability. But coming back home, I had to learn more about what really was at home, which was that has to do a lot with the extraction industry. And I had to learn oil, I had to learn gas, I had to learn coal. So in that sense, I've become this like holistic kind of, I guess, proponent of energy in general. But so with all of that, and I ended up speaking at the United Nations just from being like an insider on what was going on here on the Navajo Nation in my immediate community. And then from there, everything just trickled down because I got so much response to what I was doing, to my work. I mean, everyone just came at me. And the thing is like, this was not even like research stuff. I mean, I think actually the one thing that really helped us is that we do have a science background. So I was able to talk about this and from an economic stance and also from like a scientific point of view. And so when I'm talking with large audiences, I can translate between the two. And then I can kind of like feel my audience out. So my delivery was just like, it was like, I don't even want to say a home run, but it was way more than I expected in terms of the response. So from that, I had a few like major institutions and a few donors and philanthropists and people just like in Citibank and people in Deutsche Bank and kind of like these large corporate, you know, places that want to do better and sustainable and like cultural awareness and stuff. And then Massachusetts Institute of Technology from all angles, don't even remember, came knocking at my door, and it just became really overwhelming. And that was only a little over a year ago. So the whole thing has changed my trajectory in life. And a lot of my work has become community-based, a lot of social responsibility for corporations, and a lot of social and just transition of energy in general. And also, of course, taking care of our water, because water is right here, stone throw away from where I am. So in this whole process, I believe in engaging, and I'm engaging the community, immediate community, meeting my neighboring farmers, the tribal communities, the tribal college communities, because I truly believe, I know that we have talent in these tribal colleges that just needs to be elevated. They need to believe in this, really believe that they can get to that next step. And also Navajo Preparatory School, where some of our brightest young minds are. And we just cultivate these different students, even groups of students. But also in that is Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Like we are really open to them just because, number one, they have showed, this is the only major institution that has showed commitment to what we do in a way of like students doing homework before they come to the reservation, to our farm, knowing our issues. Like I don't even, the first step was like these freshman students who knew so much about tribal water policy that it blew my mind. So stuff like that. And so that was the first step. And then we invited more students, but in that whole time and space, my mother got a fellowship at MIT, and then I got a different type of fellowship, all in different capacities. But in this way, my family is able to have the communication and connection we need to move forward with MIT. We have a great relationship with the president of Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the Earth Sciences program, the MIT Media Lab, and the Terrascope program. Also the Priscilla King Gray, which is like the community outreach angle that a lot of the MIT first ladies have been a part of or run. So it's a two-way commitment. They really understand that it is really important. It is so important to engage community in these citizen projects and trying to like elevate, say an ethnobotany research project or a water remediation project or a land reclamation project or anything that has to do with a tribal community, like tribal commitment, commitment to community is so important. And not just for that short term, but for an extended period of time. Like it really, gone are the days where you come in and you throw whatever promises of very short term and like a band-aid. Those are gone. I mean, it's our generation now and their generations past, you know, upcoming generations that are going to be the ones really having that say. And now we have our seat at the table. So it's about really engaging community. And I think that and with Navajo Power, the reason why I joined forces with them is that they believe in that, and we all believe in that, and we're kind of all the same generation. We're kind of understanding and helping people to understand. It's a very generational thing, I also believe, and almost holding their hands to understand this. And a way that we have been so successful as a nonprofit, Back to the Farm, is that we're open. We're open to, I don't want to say dumb questions, but a really big way that we ask that students and visitors just be really frank, like, because this might be the only space that you are in a Native American community, in a Native American family, in a Native American like nonprofit, Native American educational space, that you can ask anything you want. And with that really relaxes the students to where we are really actually able to have dialogue and see what the needs are on both sides. So that's one thing that I really stress, is that tribal communities do have those champions, and to set yourself above and go kind of like differentiate yourselves from other previous researchers or projects. It's really important to find that champion or those champs of the tribal communities and work with them and elevate their work. And in that way, you're going to be elevating the entire community, because they are the community outreach people, and their relationships with the community is something that just doesn't come overnight. So that's really important. In terms of my other work with the just transition stuff, it's now like the transitional space from non-renewables to renewables is now. And with this whole series of food, energy, water systems, all interconnected. And I feel like my work is not just like, it's really amazing because it's all connecting now. It's all connecting for me in a way that I can bring the community with me. And my work is not just what I think is important. And actually, it's not even what I think is important. It's what my community thinks is important. So when we do this work, everything that comes to the table is what the community feels like it needs to be addressed. And so that's really a big part of what we do. And also the students, because we are an education farm, and it is a 4 credit hour course, upper level, but we've learned so much from our students. For this summer, for example, it was a lot of more of the students teaching us because of the generational changes and stuff. And the students allow us to be where we are because we value their input. We value everything from the technology space that we don't understand to what they feel like is important because they've read so much about this and that. And it's like, can we just go outside and can we actually see this ecosystem? Can we actually see this water? Can we actually see this, then these types of soils and then the difference. And so, and also there, and that opens up students to where they feel valued, and then in return, they are more open to us and asking questions that they wouldn't be able to ask otherwise. And a big part of this, I think, are my parents and my dad being the educator bilingual Navajo English, that there's that sort of intimacy of having an elder there who, but not only knows like traditional knowledge, but also knows how a classroom is run and knows the value of 4 credit hours in an upper level course. And so those are some things that really help the nonprofit to be really successful. And in this time of this like COVID, this pandemic time, we've had a lot of interest in the work that we do, because there's, I don't want to say trend, but it's the word used, the terms food sovereignty. And what has happened in the past 6 months since the pandemic started is that we've got so much just media, kind of like media attention or inquiries about wanting to do a story on us, or what is it that, how is it that you guys are in the food sovereignty space because of the pandemic? Well, what I usually end up doing is passing that on to organizations that are restarting the movement that are restarting the movement of food sovereignty, and just trying to get out there, because in all honesty, our farm, we never restarted anything. We've been doing it for, I was counting this the other, as like 4 generations that I've been a part of. But it's been in us and we've never stopped. So anybody trying to like get that, we help those organizations, and we help students, and we help people to get their work out there, because and try to get them to a level that they can be more sustaining on their own as organizations, or as like school projects or anything like that. So we help a lot of other farmers out there. During this pandemic, we shifted over to, since we couldn't do much interaction with students, is that we worked with interns that we had. We produced over 4 tons of food, and we donated about 3.5 tons of that to our Navajo neighboring communities that don't have access to fresh vegetables or don't have access to water for farming. And it's a lot of stuff that we took for granted. So that was kind of like our intention at the very beginning of this pandemic. And we knew very early on that this is going to be with us forever. Like, not forever, but for a long time. But we will continue to donate food. And we just really appreciate the land that we have and the water. And I think just living in a 400 square foot apartment in New York City for over 15 years really helps me to appreciate the, everything that we have as Native people. And my hope is that the Navajo people who live on the San Juan River stop taking this for granted, because it is something that our ancestors, our lineage, and people, our grandparents, our leaders, and just like our ancestors have fought for. So that is where I'm coming from. And it's a lot deeper than the paycheck, than getting your name out there. And it's really a voice for people who don't have it. And now I am open to like any questions and any dialogue. I actually prefer dialogue over anything else. So, and I know there are probably like snippets of my story that may have been missed here and there. So feel free to ask. I am open book, just like I am with students. No questions are dumb questions. And yeah, I am whatever you feel.
Thank you, Naraba, for that presentation. It's really inspiring to hear your story. This is the first time I have heard the entire journey that you have made, returning back home and uh, really working with your parents to support tribal college students. And it's just amazing the work you've done. I'm really inspired. And I think that you've really brought up some important points that um, the University of Arizona can learn from. And I believe that communities should be at the table in an equitable way. And I think a lot of times university researchers don't understand that, or they fail to do that. And I've seen in Canada with the First Nations how they've brought in community members to be mentors to faculty and departments about community-based research and partnerships with Indigenous communities. And it's great to see that MIT has committed to doing that by providing that similar fellowship for your mom and you to be at the table in an equitable way. And I hope that that's something that the University of Arizona could do into the future. So thank you for sharing. Any questions
Yeah.
out there?
Oh, and also like I should say that one of the main reasons that we said okay to MIT is my father being an educator. We were just like, that it was so random how they ended up on our farm, and it's actually a really cool story because as Navajo people, as Pueblo people, as Native people, we have blessing of the field, right? We have our Hatali and we have our medicine people come and they bless the fields. And it just so happened that this group of students was finishing their 2 week tour trip of the Navajo Nation. And Navajo Technical University, it said, hey, we know of a farm that you guys can visit. Let me go ask them first. And it just so happened that day that we were having the blessing of the fields that day. And so we were like, no, my mom and I were like, no. And my brother were like, no, it's too intimate. It's just not a thing we should do. But my dad being he's like the traditionalist, and he's like, but as a teacher, he was like, MIT students, they're here, they came a long way, have them come, they're going to learn a lot. So that's something that my dad really has to say from an educator perspective. And so had it not been MIT, and had it not been like, it just all synced up really well. And what we laugh about is we're like, wow, we wonder if the MIT students feel like, or the faculty feel like we did all of that for them. And we just laugh about that because it was, it's a kind of like a long day thing that we do the blessing of the fields, and we have a ceremony, we have our songs and everything. But we just included them as part of it, and they were immediately like drawn to it. And so that was a really cool part of a really fast like integration, and a really fast almost like no precursor to what they were getting into that day. It was like full on cultural experience for them. More questions?
I'll start out the question. I'm sure people are thinking still. Um, could you talk a little bit more about your course that you co-taught with your parents that was offered at Navajo Technical University? I heard about it, and I think one of my students that I mentor participated in that. And so I wanted to ask you if you could tell us a little bit more about what the
Yeah,
students did. Thank you.
sure. So we had to get this course. We had to get it reviewed and everything, of course, by the board at Navajo Technical University, and it had to be okayed. So this course it's it's offered through the Environmental Science Division of Navajo Technical University. It's an upper level course, so mostly I think juniors and seniors were in this. And when we're asked to do this, we as having the farm, you know, being from a farming community, and knowing kind of the obstacles and what we deal with as tribal plot farmers, we know like firsthand what's important, what would translate to like an academic setting. So we designed it in 4 parts, to where my father would teach the kind of traditional, like the medicinal and the songs, the ceremonial song portion of it, which would include like walking out into the farm and learning the Navajo terminology for for a lot of the plants or the activities that happen on the farm, and then just more of like the sacred terminology for how things are related. And then my brother, being the outdoors person and having a biology background, also having like an economics and background, he tied in more of the biological ecosystem of the area of the farm, actually, because we were on the river. So a lot of that, and then the soil, and a lot of physics with the water, with the irrigation and stuff like that. So that was really cool because the students could actually see physics in motion and stuff like that. And then also the chemistry. So that's where the hard sciences came in. And all of this stuff was done on the farm. So it would be like 4 hours a week on the farm. And then my portion came in with more of the policy and more of the introducing like the Navajo Indian Irrigation Project, and then tribal water policy and tribal water claims on the Colorado River, but mostly here on San Juan. And then settlements around or lawsuits around agriculture, around mineral and water rights, or minerals and water. So for example, like the Keep's-Eagle settlement or the Cobell settlement, those are really big parts of what we focused on. And then the last part was like the preparation and the seed saving on my mom's part. So all of that is part of the program. And it ended with just kind of a big project in the end, whether it's like an oral report or it was a whole system of just, you know, just as you would in the classroom, you'd have quizzes, you'd have a midterm, and then the final portion of that. And it's great because it's the students really enjoyed the program. They liked the course, and it kind of opened their eyes much more to agriculture careers in STEM. And that's kind of one of the things that we focus on as well, as we really push the hard sciences in conjunction with our traditional teachings, but foremost traditional teachings. Yeah. And you know, other universities have asked to do that, that they want to be part of this, or that they want to kind of emulate the syllabus. We don't share that full syllabus with anybody, but why we're so protective of it is because a lot of it has to do with hands-on. Like you got to be on the farm to like feel that, to really feel the soil, to feel the water, to be in the element, and to just the drive to the farm is a whole big part of the process, because you get to see like a lot of the socioeconomic lack of infrastructure. And that's a big part of understanding why water structures are the way they are, or the lack of infrastructure in general. That's a big part of digesting how all of this is the way it is, or why it's the way it is. So that's why we don't just have this stuff online, because the whole thing is process.
Thank you, Naraba. It's amazing the work that you're doing, especially education and contributing to the workforce development. That's one of our visions for the Indigifuse program, is to develop a diverse workforce with intercultural awareness. So one of our trainees has a question. Jameis Lee, who's from the Navajo Nation, he's pursuing his master's in agriculture, biosystems engineering. And His question is, could you elaborate more on the Director's Fellowship Program at MIT?
Oh yeah, hi James. That's a really good question because I didn't even know what that was when they contacted me. It's pretty much like I don't know if you're familiar with the MacArthur's Foundation fellowship is where somebody kind of sees the work that you're doing and they spy on you for a while, and then they contact you, and then you have a conversation with a few people, and you're just like, oh, these people want to learn about what I do, and you talk about what you do, and then they do a bunch of research that you don't even know they did on you, and then they select you, and then they offer it to you, and you take it or not. And I really had a lot of apprehension around that, around accepting it, because when I was offered it, I was just really overwhelmed with the first fellowship my mom got being at MIT, and I know it was a great thing, but it really felt like this responsibility to your community to make sure that your talent returns home, and that that all these talented scientists and students and it's like, wow, yes, we had all these offers from people, the MIT community, just like, send your students here, send your students, you're gonna get full ride, and they're gonna do this. And yeah, that's great. But the thing is, like, we want them back. Like, we want our students back. You can keep them, you can train them, but we want them back. So a lot of this was really overwhelming because we were expected to, like, not only create these pathways there, but how is it that we bring them back home? And that's something we really stress to the people at the MIT community. So when I was offered this, I was kind of in that mindset of like, wow, they're already offering all this stuff to people who are going to go through these pathway programs with us. But how does that look if I were to like accept this? That's like MIT recognition overload. So it took me like 2 or 3 months to accept that. And then on top of that, I was having more apprehension because of the whole Epstein case, and the ties to MIT Media Lab. And so I felt like that was really like conflicting in the work that I do. But I really had to examine how this stuff would really do good for our communities. And so I ended up accepting. But yeah, it's a group of fellows who do amazing work all over the world, and people who just don't, who are not traditionally recognized for stuff they do. And then the range of people range from like Van Jones. So funny thing is, like, with this whole thing, Van Jones, that CNN had put something other, whatever, for Native Americans. Well, Van Jones is a director's fellow, and I was like, hey, you have to change this. Like, we are the other. And I was like, when are you? And then, when are you going to shed light on the Native community of Arizona? Like, there's a large population. So I sent him a bunch of links, and I was like, look at this, let's have a conversation. So I don't know if I had any influence on that, but stuff like that, you kind of like change people's minds and the narrative of the people of these communities that are actually coming from. So anything from like superstars, professional athletes, to amazing scientists, and people on the ground working like myself. And you all collaborate and you do amazing things to elevate each other's work. So encourage each other, that's what the Director's Fellows is. So, and I don't know how recommendations go about that. People in the whole MIT community don't even know how this stuff works.
Yeah, that was quite shocking when I saw the other on national TV talk about the invisibility of Native Americans in the United States. That just pretty much was an insult, to say the least. We have another question from an Indigifuse trainee from Frances Wilberg, and her question is, have you encountered situations where traditional Navajo agricultural methods are more effective and productive than modern farming methods? How do you incorporate the benefits of new innovations in agricultural science and engineering while prioritizing traditional and agricultural knowledge.
Okay, I have a really good example of that that's going on right now. So, you know, as like a family organization, we have a lot of discussion on these topics and how they integrate and how you translate them into layman's terms, or just have like normal people discussions on these. And one of these is has to do with soil science. And I'm just doing this as an example so that you can kind of see how we integrate all of this together. So soil science, you know, with it's soil tilling has been, for us, we're looking at not tilling soil anymore. Like, we are focusing now on no tilling, and it is something that we believe that was really popularized by industry, by John Deere, by people making these large farming tools or farming equipment. So now when you go back to smaller scale or natural farming, when you're looking at a lot of these organizations or farms that are practicing more natural food production, they're actually not tilling their soil. And when have discussions with my mother, and she said, you know, we never had like heavy equipment as there's like one person in the community who had a tractor a long time ago, and she remembers as a kid that all they did was like make rows. And so when we think about this is a way that we are really bringing back our traditional way of planting, our traditional way of farming, because it's been so for years that these manufacturers of these large equipment have just like ingrained in farming communities that you need this equipment, you need this, you need that. And you know what? We haven't done it in 3 years and we're fine. And we've had the most like productive crop yield in the past 3 years and we're fine. And so, and we're actually going to invest in like heavier equipment about 2 years ago. And we're like, you know, we don't even need that. Like, it would just sit there. So when we think about things like, and also getting back to our seeds, like we took for granted our seeds. And when the pandemic hit, wow, we just had so much, you know, people wanted to plant their own seeds and plant their own crops, like traditional crops, and they just didn't have access to it. And our seeds have been commercialized. And so Native people had to go out and buy their own seeds. We're like, this is just crazy. So we just put a note out there and we're like, hey, let's blast this and let's just offer seeds to everyone who wants them. So we did. And then just getting back to how we share, like we're supposed to share. We're not supposed to charge for our seeds, and we're not supposed to charge for this knowledge. But back to like integrating the science part of that, now we're able to take that and we're actually sending our seeds and our crops to food labs to see how old and how non-adulterated our seeds are. And we've never had that. We've never done that before, because they've always been on our farm. They've always been through our family, and they've never cross-pollinated with, you know, anything else. So those are just some things that we kind of like integrate. And so we're using like new technology to see where our seeds actually came from and how old they are, and where these other traces that don't belong there, are not necessarily like traditional to our area, where those come from. And that's really cool, because we're able to talk more about that more in depth than normal from a scientific aspect. And then also from there, we're also able to get the nutritional value of a lot of our traditional foods, which we're actually going to get back into that. We're sending some stuff out to a neighboring food lab right down the road. And that's something that we're going to be recording this year. Yeah, that's exciting, because we don't have time. Otherwise we'd never have time for that.
Yeah, I recently watched a documentary called Kiss the Ground. So if those out there haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It talks a lot about no tilling, and focuses on regenerative agriculture.
Right.
We have another question by Elio Verona, and he is asking about farms. Maybe if you could give more description to your farm and like the size and where it's located along the San Juan River.
Yeah, to our farm. So we practice dry, well, not dry. We are in the arid desert, the high desert. So we are actually so physically we are directly south of Colorado in the Four Corners region. And literally like I can throw a stone throw away from the river. The river's right in the back of right across from where I am. That's the San Juan River. And that's why I ended up doing a lot of the work that I did, is because it's so close to us. It's like right there. The farm is 14 acres and we have the San Juan River on one side and then we have irrigation on the other side. So we are surrounded by water. So we have an irrigation system, and then so our water does come from the San Juan River through the irrigation system. And yeah, we plant mostly traditional Navajo crops, and then we are slowly getting into a more diverse variety of seeds with our interns. A lot of the practices, we do, we've been doing them for a long time. Yeah, it's not nothing really new. We just really want to share that experience with generations.
Okay, thank you. We have one last question here before we wrap up from another trainee, Amy Pierce. Her question is, are you interested in helping others develop ethno-agriculture education programs?
We have been working with other organizations to do that. I think we could be more active in doing that. We're mostly from an academic stance, I think. And also it's really difficult because we're not really into scaling the size of our program, which is a little bit unfortunate, just because I think with that, we would lose a lot of the intimacy and what we can handle to keep it the way we want. But we can definitely give pointers and teach how to go about that process. Excuse me.
Great, thank you, Naraba. Well, I want to thank Naraba for her presentation today, and I've learned a lot from your presentation and the work that you are doing to link together the community with students, both at high school, tribal college, and all the way up to MIT. So thank you so much for sharing and for your time today. I also want to thank the Indigenous Sloan program and the School of Natural Resources and the Environment for co-sponsoring this program. We will be doing this seminar series next semester as well. And we will, our first talk will be on January 20th. I hope you will join us for this wonderful day where we will be having a guest speaker from Dig Deep. Her name is Emma Robbins. She has a Navajo water project where she provides water to Navajo families that do not have running water. So she'll be talking on that day. So please join us. And thank you again, Naraba, for speaking today. And I thank everyone for attending, and I hope you have a great week.